The resurrection is the one that is the most difficult for people to swallow.
Yes.
That's the one that requires the most faith.
The most faith and the most belief. Yeah, resurrection.
Yeah.
Who gets back up 3 days later after he gets murdered in public? Who gets back up under his own power? Buddha didn't do that shit.
Right.
Yeah. So some people say, "Oh, it's a fairy tale." He never existed, but he did. And all the evangelists, the apostles who went out there, every single one of those guys died rather than deny their belief. And nobody dies for a lie. Nobody.
Right.
So that's part of what I'm doing. It's like showing nobody dies for a lie.
Yeah. The resurrect.
Boom. Good morning, Owasso. This is the Twins with Owasso Live, and this is the morning.
The resurrection is the
continuing our topics on Easter and the Pope recently passing away. We brought on our resident expert on Catholicism, our buddy here, Edgar, and we were just going to ask him some questions on about how the papacy works and how the election of the next pope will work. And I have some questions about it's like how the appointing works and how the how things go. So we're gonna pick his brain because he actually used to be a man of the cloth, or was going to be a man of the cloth at some point in his life, and then decided he was a family man over that. So go ahead, just introduce yourself, Edgar, real quick, and let us know what your bona fides is about this topic, and then we'll jump right into it.
Sure, sure. Kevin Egger. I served with the Watsons in the 45th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, and we met each other through OCS. But I live up here in Ulaga, and yeah, I've been a Catholic since 19 when I converted in my sophomore year of college. Also during a papal election. Actually, that was my first experience of Catholicism, was the death of John Paul II, which was the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, from 1978 all the way to 2005. So he reigned for about 28 years, 27 years.
That's a heck of a reign.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was Pope from before I was born, and yeah, I saw his election all over. Well, I saw his death, his funeral, and then I saw the election that succeeded him, all on CNN and, MSNBC and Fox, and it was just plastered all over the place, because, we think Francis is popular, and he is important, rightfully so. But John Paul II had been Pope for almost 3 decades, seen the end of the Soviet Union, had been in World War II, and was under the Soviet oppression. I mean, he was a man that was one of the largest figures of the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I saw that, all of our presidents went to his funeral, except for Dick Cheney for continuity of government's sake.
Mm-hmm.
When we saw, Islamic sheikhs and, Indian presidents come and everybody was there, I was like, oh, what is this? It kind of struck my fancy, and just kind of that's where, my pathway towards Catholicism started.
All right, good deal. So about the I guess the election of a new pope. I mean, how does it work? I mean, do you know a whole lot about the intricacies of the election? And here's another thing too. A big question I have is, I know that Pope Francis wasn't the most popular pope that's ever been. I know that he kind of had some stances that were needless to say controversial on for a lot of, especially more conservative types. But he appointed 109 of the upcoming elector guys. So what is your opinion on that, and how does just the process of this whole thing work, and what kind of influence will those 109 have over the actual appointing of
yeah. Well, so Pope, also, just to start off, the Pope is a nickname, right? It's sort of a slang for father, right? That we have. The two most accurate ways to describe who that man is or what office he holds is the Bishop of Rome. So the chief priest of the Diocese of Rome, the churches around Rome, and also the Vicar of Christ. So, and that stems from Peter's admonition, or Christ's admonition of Peter back in the Gospels, where he says 3 times, "Do you love me?" Right, and the last time he tells Peter to feed my sheep. He gives them the mission to lead the church on earth as his vicar. So that's what the Pope does. The Pope is the successor of Peter, and Peter was the leader of the apostles. so on this earth.
Yeah, and for those to give context to that thing, he asked when he asked Peter, "Do you love me 3 times?" It's because Peter also denied Christ 3 times before. So it's so, if you know Bible well, it's so poetic, it's so beautiful. It's like the whole Christ. How many times must we forgive? 7 times 77. Like, Christ just poetically was like, "You love me," and then he's like, "Of course I do, Lord." It's like, "Do you love me?" It's like, "With all my heart, Lord." It's like, "Do you love me 3 times?" It's so beautiful. So sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Not at all.
That context is important.
Not at all. And then a couple other things. Peter is always depicted with the keys to the kingdom of heaven, right? He's the gatekeeper. I mean, that's like classic, gates of St. Peter at the heaven, right? He's the gatekeeper. And then there's also the idea that, especially with Easter, right? Who got to the tomb first after the resurrection, right? So Mary tells the apostles, who gets there first?
Peter.
No,
it's not Peter.
No, it's
Peter
not
gets
Peter.
beaten. He gets
gets
dusted.
beaten there
Yeah.
by the youngest, by John. But does John enter the tomb first?
No.
Peter. He waits for Peter. Peter goes in the tomb first. So Peter has that precedence, right?
That's the big meme going around the internet right now. Is like he's like
Andrew.
Air
Johns.
he's just, yeah, straight up like he goes. Oh, I beat you to the tomb, Peter. And it's just like, no one will know. He goes, no, everyone will know.
And the Air Peters, that's good.
Yeah, well, Air John.
Air John.
John's pastor.
Air John. Yeah.
The thing is that Peter would have been, who knows how many years older than John, right? John was a young man, and anyways, it doesn't matter. It's an example of the enthusiasm of John, but the precedence of Peter, right? So that is the Pope, and Pope Francis is the 250th, 256th Pope. I don't know exactly the number, but it's quite a few over the course of 2 centuries. And his role is to lead, to feed, to confirm the sheep, right? So upon the election of a pope, that is a lifetime appointment. No one can get rid of the pope. It's the last absolute monarchy in Western Europe. It is a position of supreme authority within the church, and when it comes to electing a new one, we use a group of men called cardinals. And cardinals wear red. They only have one job in the church. It does not mean that they have any sort of special administration. It doesn't mean that they have special financial control or they're in charge of certain dioceses or certain cathedrals. They have one job, and that's to elect the Pope. That's it. That's what makes a cardinal. So you don't have to be a priest or a bishop or a deacon to be a cardinal. You just have to be a baptized man. So, for instance, back when the Papal States were around, when they were a territorial power, they controlled most of Central Italy. The commanding general of the papal armies, right? He would be a cardinal because of his influence within the church. So the cardinals will come from all over the world upon the death of the Pope, whenever possible. And these are extraordinary circumstances. For instance, Cardinal Zen, who is the former Archbishop of Hong Kong, he's basically been under house arrest by the Chinese Communist government for I don't know how long. They've taken his passport away. He can't travel. But for the election of the new Pope, the Chinese Communist government gave him his passport back and let him fly to Italy.
Wow.
Let's see if he goes back.
Yeah.
He will.
I bet he will.
He will. No, he will, because he won't abandon his flock. He's a good bishop. He has a good reputation. So, anyways, the word that we use for this process is a conclave, and that stems from the Latin with a key, because you lock them away, you'd sequester these men away until they chose a new pope. And if we want to back up even further about like the choice of how bishops come about, back before technology would allow us to communicate, across the globe instantaneously, it could take weeks for messages to go just sections of Italy, right? So there were the clergy of the various cities or provinces. Then they would get together and they would choose their next bishop, and that bishop would be eventually confirmed by the Pope, whatever, or be overruled by the Pope. But then the Pope himself was elected by the clergy of Rome, because again, transportation, communication, you can't get all the
Logistics.
Logistics. It would take years to elect a new pope if you did that. So the clergy of Rome would get together and they would elect the new bishop of Rome. And throughout the years, that has translated to what we have now. And so every cardinal is now called either a cardinal bishop or a cardinal priest or a cardinal deacon, and they are assigned parishes within Rome, all throughout Rome. There's hundreds of parishes in Rome. And so they are clergy of Rome. Like the cardinals are the clergy of the city of Rome. And so then they get together and they elect a new bishop.
Okay.
And so they get sequestered. They can't talk to the media. They are only allowed to have one servant. You know, they have pretty simple meals, and you're not allowed to campaign for yourself. You're not allowed to say vote for me. Like you, I think I'm pretty sure you're not even allowed to vote for yourself. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to vote for somebody else. They have voter ID. They have paper ballots.
Some logical thought processes.
And I think it's twice a day they get together in the Sistine Chapel, and on paper they write down their choice for who they want to be the next bishop. There is a presiding cardinal who will then read out the tallies. They'll say, "Hey, we've got 75 for Archbishop, Smith, and we have 65 for Archbishop, Diego," and then they'll spend some more time in prayer and contemplation. They'll come back and they'll vote again. And after 2 weeks, I think it is 10 days or 15 days, they are then given only bread and water as an incentive to get the show on the road. We haven't had a long election in quite a while. I think the last few elections have been wrapped up in a day or two, maybe 3 or 4 rounds of voting, and it's been, but the longest conclave ever was 3 years. And what eventually happened is that the people of Rome got tired of feeding them and sheltering them, and I think eventually they actually tore off the roof of the house that they were staying in, so that they were exposed to the elements, and they stopped giving them anything fancy. I think is kind of where the bread and water comes from, and and so it's a funny process. And
Not to interrupt, but I think we should do that with Congress.
yeah, I mean, it definitely works. When you make people focus and you stress them out, you can make them take action. Basically, is what it is.
Absolutely, you take away those comforts and luxuries, and then
Yeah.
people all of a sudden, it's like, I can't remember. I was watching The Chosen the other day, and as I was watching, there was a scene where they were talking about like sleeping on the ground reminds us that we're all, and that's like being in the military too. It's like sleeping on the ground makes us all realize how vulnerable and how and how we're on the same level as everyone else. It's like I'm just like, wow, yeah, that's good. That's because when you sleep on the ground in the military, you're like, it's like I am the lowest of the low right now. I'm just laying here on the ground in a sack.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I don't know, a few more points, I guess. The Holy Spirit is involved in the election process, but the Holy Spirit does not pick the Pope. We do not believe that God Himself picks the next Pope. He guides the cardinals so that there's never going to be anything catastrophic. The gates of hell will not prevail against the church. A lot of people say, like, if the church had been a purely human institution, it would have died a long time ago through the stupidity and ignorance of men.
Oh, absolutely.
So it will prevent catastrophic issues from arising, but it doesn't mean we won't have bad popes occasionally. And then as for more your contemporary questions about Francis, a pope was going to upset people.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
popes
matter.
have always upset
Right.
people.
It doesn't
throughout
matter
history.
who they are. I mean, Pope Francis is considered maybe a little bit more progressive. He's going to upset people. Pope Benedict XVI, his predecessor, was considered extremely orthodox conservative. He's going to upset people, right? You're going to have Pope John Paul II, who was kind of like a celebrity and traveled the world. That's going to upset people. And then you had popes who never left Rome. That's going to upset people, right? So it's like, whether the popularity of the world, even the popularity of Catholics, is not a good measurement of whether or not a man has been a good pope or not.
For sure. And the other thing too is the media tends to take things wildly out of context, or they just hone in on the one thing. Like, it's like, it's like when I was listening to what the Pope said about the whole blessing homosexuals and homosexual marriage, it's like he never said, he goes, I cannot bless a marriage between homosexuals. It's not the sacrament. That's not, I guess.
You cannot
but the
bless
blessing
sin.
is for everyone.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I do fundamentally agree with that, because I mean, it's like we hate the sin, but we love the sinner. It's like
Right.
at the end of the day. But at the same time, it's like I listen to other people talk about it's opening the doors to a very, it's opening the slippery slope fallacy kind of thing. I don't know how
Yeah.
true that is, but I kind of see that perspective. But at the same time, it's like, it's like the blessing is for all.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could definitely say a legitimate criticism of this papacy, this former papacy, was a lack of clarity. Um, I think probably the most famous and open. This is public. This is not like scandalous church whatever dirty laundry. Is that there was a time where after one of his encyclicals, a large group of cardinals actually got together and wrote something we actually call it a dubia, meaning like, hey, we have a doubt about something, a dubia, right? Dubious is doubt means doubtful. And could you please, Holy Father, clarify what you meant about this, right?
Mhm.
And famously, it was never answered.
Wow.
So, or infamously, I
Yeah.
guess. So, while Pope Francis had a lot of positive qualities, um, and he wasn't a libertine, there's, he never, um, you never had a scandal of him leading a hedonic lifestyle or
Mhm.
getting caught with a mistress or anything like that, right? But I think probably that's the strongest criticism is maybe a lack of clarity.
Lack of clarity. That's good.
There's some ambiguity with the things he said or the things he wrote, but you know, um, yeah, we'll see. As to who the next pope will be, I mean, literally only God knows. It's not the same thing um, of modern day politics where you've got a minority leader and a majority leader, and you've got
Mhm.
a Senate leader and you've got a House leader, and you've got you know recent elections that say like, oh, this person's done this or this person's polling is this, right? Polling is irrelevant. There's only like 120 men who are going to vote, right?
Mhm.
Who's going to poll, right? There's no
Exactly.
polling, right? Um, and they all know each other,
Mhm.
right? So there's no influence of well, I'm not going to say there's no influence of social media, but public pressure is significantly minimized
Mhm.
by the fact that they're not on the internet during this time period. They're not texting, they're not on social media. They're all physically present with each other and
Mhm.
talking to each other. And we all know that I may hate on AOC or something like that on Twitter, but if I ever met Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, I would be polite and have a
Yes,
normal
exactly.
conversation with her, right? And so that's kind of the same thing. They're all there together. They might have different, sensibilities. They might have different prerogatives, maybe different priorities, but um, you know, hopefully they get together. The Holy Spirit influences them, and they choose who they believe will be best. Um,
For sure. Does it have to be a unanimous vote?
no,
No. What's it?
no.
What's it? Just 2/3?
Is it? I think it's 66% plus one.
Okay.
I
sixty-six
think so.
percent.
It has to be a super majority.
Okay.
Like you have to have because you want to have a mandate behind you.
Mhm.
That pope needs the mandate of the cardinals behind him because he's there's no army. Like
Mhm.
Stalin famously said, how many divisions does the pope have? Right? There's no army that the pope gets to like enforce his will. On the church. Right? The
Mhm.
church is led by a soft leadership, right? A servant leadership where it's a convincing leadership, it's a proposing leadership, it's an inviting leadership. There's no coercion or fear able. Like he can't exert that, right?
Mhm.
You know,
You're saying he's not going to call for another crusade?
I would say that is not going to happen in 2025. I'm going to place my bet on that.
We're
Yeah.
not gonna retake Jerusalem.
No, I'm definitely saying that is not going to be the case.
Now, that's what me and Corey actually talked about on the show the other day. Where it's like the Catholic parishes have like expanded in so many countries and so far over the world. Is like there's no place that they could go that we could invade. They're like, hey, we're kind of invading a place that's already Catholic or has a Catholic,
Influence already.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, one of the leading candidates, like the regions of the world, one of the leading candidates that people consider popable. We use an Italian world.
Popable.
We use an Italian world called papabili, papabilii, something like that.
Sounds
But
right.
it's basically popable. Are they able to be pope? Is there a
Mhm.
reasonable chance of them becoming pope? Is Cardinal Pizzaballa? He is the Archbishop of Jerusalem. He's the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem. So he's the highest ranking Roman clergy member in the Holy Land. And obviously that's a diplomatic hornet's nest, and
No kidding.
it's a really important part of the world. So he's seen as a leading candidate.
Well, that kind of brings me to the next topic that I wanted to talk about was this right here. I'll have to turn the camera, so you have to give me one or turn
Yeah.
my screen.
Yeah,
Give
yeah,
me
yeah.
1 second.
Show
here.
Egger. Yeah.
There we go. All right. see it, and this is I don't know how true this is.
I can't see it really.
Okay, it's this one right here. If you can see it, so, but you can just listen to it. It's just mainly.
Okay, I'll just listen.
The Prophecy of the Popes.
Oh boy.
This book was found in the Vatican archives. Predicted every single pope from in 1143 all the way to our current pope. But the scary thing is, after Pope Francis, the last one, it just says Judgment Day.
Oh gosh.
It literally ends after Pope Francis.
Yes, the creepiest thing that I saw inside St. Paul's Basilica, but bordering the whole inner sanctuary, is every single pope. But what's weird is that there's only a certain amount of markers to where you can put a picture. There's one left after Pope Francis. They have always said that once that last slot is filled, it will be the end of the world. What he predicted, the time it took to go from the first pope that he wrote about, halfway mark, was 422 years. And he's saying from the middle one to the end, another 422 years will be the end of the world. If you do 422 years from the middle pope, which was 1585, that year is 2027.
Dang.
It's even weirder. Pope John the 23rd, and he said that the end of the world would happen 2,000 years plus Christ's life. So that adds up to 2027 as well. Here's something terrifying.
Now, I don't know how true that is. I just heard that and I just thought that was interesting. And I wanted to hear your guys' take on it.
I mean, that's like your opinion, man. Like, no, I mean, I've heard it before. You know, I mean, whenever I hear about prophecies, you know, to verify that or to not verify that, like, who knows? I don't know. What we do know is that there's, especially when we think about these types of things, like, oh, the world's going to end in 2027 or something like that. What we do know is that there's two very, very specific stories in the Gospels that I think of, right? I think of the watchful virgins, right? You know, there's the virgins who take care of their lamps and they're ready for the bridegroom, and then there's also the servants, you know, the servants who are ready for their master to return. And basically, what that tells us, what the actual Gospels tell us, what Scripture tells us that we've had for you know, very soon after the apostles were commissioned, you know, they started writing, right, and we put the Bible together in the you know 300s. What Scripture has told us is that we don't know when the Lord will return.
Yes, that's what I was about to say.
What
No
it says,
man shall know the date or time.
right? And what it says is that you should be prepared, you should be prudent, you should be watchful. So whenever anybody talks about that, you think about, I always like to think about, well, what are my action items, right? Well, my action items are to go to confession. They are to keep the commandments. They are to live out my vocation. Those are things I should be doing anyways.
Yeah.
Right? Okay? So I think the best fruit that can come from discerning prophecies is I should go to confession. Right? I should go to confession. I should go to mass. I should pray more, because I don't know when the Lord is going to return, and I want to be like the prudent virgin or the watchful servant and be ready for when my Lord returns.
Right.
So I don't, you know, we do not know when the world is going to end, but everyone's world will end within your lifetime because you will die.
Yeah.
All three of us might be dead before the end of the day, right? We will all have our worlds end within our lifetimes.
Fingers crossed.
And so then that comes, you have your particular judgment, right? You are going to be judged individually. And then there's going to be the final judgment when the world actually does end, right? And the new heavens and the new earth are created. But, you know, that's what I would say. We don't know. Go to confession, go to mass, live out your vocation, and be like the prudent virgin or the watchful servant.
Again, we have to be very careful, especially with all these TikTok types. You might
Exactly.
cut to a wider view, Chad. But yeah, with these TikTok things, it's all for clicks. You know, like a lot of these people, like, sure. I mean, how deep does their faith go? Kind of like I was talking to Chad before we started the show. We were, actually, there was a clip of who's the Pope from Africa, or the Popal candidate from Africa that everybody likes a whole lot.
There's a couple. So there's Cardinal Sarah is from Guinea. No.
Robert Sarah is the
Yeah,
one, I think, right?
So it was Sarah, and he made a comment
He's
talking
tremendous.
about,
He's tremendous.
he was talking about Europe and saying Europe is dying because they're allowing what's happening to happen to them, you know, basically being invaded by, you know, foreign invaders, you know, economic invaders. And he's like, you know, they don't have their roots aren't growing deep anymore. European roots don't go down deep, so they have nothing to anchor them anymore. Like they boiled themselves down to we're just nice. And I was talking to Chad. It's like the parable of the mustard seeds. It's like, I mean, it's what happens when you have a lack of faith in your society. It's like it's like you some seeds scattered on the road, some seeds scattered in the thorns, and you had some get on fertile ground. It's like the ones on the road planted quickly grew fast, and it's like, but they had nothing to anchor them down, and that's exactly what Europe is now. It's just this listing society that's like, well, as long as we're nice, everything's gonna be, but as long as we don't offend people, we're gonna be that's the pinnacle of what you can be, is just nice.
Yeah. I mean, Europe's ales are so varied, so there's a pretty strong strain of thought in Catholic thought that there were three revolutions that um, sort of brought Europe to where they are right now. So the first one was the Protestant Revolt, where Christendom was then rendered in half. Right, we were no longer a unified church, um, and you had religious strife that diminished the authority of the bishops and the Pope. Right, so then that split us from like religious unity. Then later there was the French Revolution, which kind of like split us from secular authority, right? So that kind of like said that that they executed the king, right? They tried to redo the calendar, right? And so the French Revolution also diminished our ability to love one another and be united to one another. And then the third was the Communist Revolution, and the Communist Revolution, was so disunifying that it basically denied the nature of man at all, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It still does.
Right. And so then those three revolutions combined with two world wars in the 20th century demoralized Europe to such a great degree. I mean, like post World War II, all their empires fell apart, right? All of them, because they had bled themselves too dry. They had spent all their money. They had demoralized themselves, and so all their empires fell apart. They lost faith in their own culture. They lost faith in themselves, and Europe in the 20th century, committed cultural suicide to a large degree.
I mean, and we still technically are. I mean, you can still feel the Marxist and communist influences here in the West. I mean, it's like we can make man, we can engineer a man. Like, not saying create them from the ground up, but again, it's like when you see this transgender stuff, when you see this stuff that is permeating in our society today, it's just like, this is such an offshoot of that. Like, I mean, I'm sure the communists in Russia were like, this is not what we're
just dope them up with pills and we can fix the
but
problem.
I mean, I don't even think they could have foresaw this in communist Russia. It'd be like, we can engineer man. It's like we can remove the religion and we can just create this human.
No, I think they did.
What they want.
No, I think they did. I mean, there's that I'm not an expert on these types of things, but there was the Nietzschean Übermensch, right? Who believe, that there was this idea that you could create your own values, right? That reason could reign supreme. And I apologize if I'm not presenting those ideas perfectly as they would be originated. But the idea that you could generate your own values was dominant. And it's also absurd.
Yeah, I am my own god.
Yeah, right. But the idea that you could just change what you believe.
Yeah. Well, at the exact same time,
change what you value.
you can if you make your own values, you decide what's valuable. Someone else's life isn't valuable today because I deem it so.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw that with the enormous amounts of deaths in the 20th century. It's like, starving your own people to death because you felt like it was the right thing to kill all of the productive farmers. You're like,
well, no, they were too successful.
There was inequality, right? So like we wanted everybody to be equal, and whether that means equally miserable, we don't care. Like as long as you're equal, right? You're like, oh, wow, that's.
Are you saying
wild
AOC
take.
and her philosophy is wrong?
Yeah. I mean, it's not everything she says is wrong, but most of what she says is wrong.
Absolutely.
It's okay to be factually wrong as long as you're morally right, right?
Yeah, and I worry, like especially with the rise of data and AI and the corporate power that we have and all that kind of stuff, is that a lot of these Congress people are literally just figureheads. They don't do anything. They don't. None of them write the law anymore. None of them do. There's all legal experts on their staffs that actually do all the writing, right? They don't debate the laws anymore. There's no real debate on the floor. They don't read the laws before they even vote
Sign
on
'em.
them.
Mhm.
You know, and so it's just to a certain degree. It's funny that we even still pay attention to them to a certain degree, and it's like actually Marie and I were just talking about whether or not Jeffersonian republicanism is even remotely still present within our country anymore. Um, or whether or not we should just go full empire.
I mean, the thing is, we're just like the right doesn't even have positions anymore. The only position the right has is we're not the left.
A lot of times, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's true conservatives, but again, it's like, what are you trying to conserve, right? Because you know, from my perspective, again, I know you guys are Protestants, but like from my perspective, those three major revolutions is what tore Western civilization apart. So when I think about conservatism, I'm thinking of like the Middle Ages. Like that's like like that's the kind of thought process and scholastic and like intellectual patrimony that I would like to see in the world. But even then, I'm so far removed from that. Like, like, do I even know what the Middle Ages are? Like,
what
do
does
I,
that actually
what does that
look
actually
like?
mean,
Yeah.
right? I don't know necessarily, right? But it's like I'd like there to be one religion, many countries, and multiple silos of sovereignty to increase people's freedom and liberty, right? To be able to choose what they ought to choose.
I think the modern the World Economic Forum type movements, they're all just trying to recreate the Tower of Babel.
Well, and they want to flip that, right?
Yeah.
So an ideal, like when we think about like my worldview, like with the Catholic worldview, like one religion, but many different nations, so that people can choose their own destinies and make decisions closer to their lives, right? Politicalized. But like the World Economic Forum would love there to be many religions, so that people don't take them seriously, and one government. That's what they would love, right? Because then it would restrict our liberties, would restrict our freedom, and you don't want individual citizens making their own decisions because they might choose wrong.
Yeah, we know better. These plebs, they can't make their own decisions.
Yeah. But which brings me to the memes that we have pulled up for today.
Yeah.
If you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but the first one I already showed once already is Assassin's Creed, Vatican Elegy. That's the first one. So that's the first take, is that J.D. Vance visits the Pope and all of a sudden he he dies. But here's the second one, which I think is more likely. This is the one I think is more likely. The Pope's last words: "I have information that will lead to the arrest of Hillary Clinton." Famous last words of a lot of people. Goodness me. Then let's see here. Uh-oh. Having it short out on me. There we go. Okay. All right. Let's get this one. This one, I said these JD Vance memes are getting ridiculous. I don't get what this is. I don't. Maybe someone knows what this is from. I don't.
He looks like a game. Oh no, that's he's a Hellraiser by the looks of it. Like one of the Cenobites from the Hellraiser franchise.
That's creepy.
I remember I saw like a post. It was like from the Atlantic or something like that, where they were really confused by people who really are on the right and who love JD Vance, but they're making these extremely disrespectful memes. They're like, I don't understand. And it was like somebody posted in response, like, that's because the left has no sense of humor.
I mean, male friendship is nothing but a constant like barrage of insulting each other. I mean, like the harsher the insult, the more they like you.
I hate to say this. Like I said, they're like, they think Trump's locker room talk is bad. Wait till they get into an army battle for more than
Well,
10
it doesn't
minutes.
matter. I mean, even more civilized encounters, like yesterday in my office, right? So we work in the office Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I just what did I say? I said something. I insulted one of my coworkers. Like basically I had lack of confidence in them, and and it was very deadpan delivered. But obviously a joke. And like my boss, like 3 levels up, is like right down the hallway, and he's like, ah.
Again, it just goes to show you that these institutions, particularly the Atlantic, they're just filled with women who don't understand men. And again, anything that they don't understand is obviously like go to toxic masculinity. It's a problem with men. It's like why it's like it. Maybe we're different. Maybe men and women have different roles in society. Maybe it's because we relate to each other very differently. It's like I don't understand why we can't just understand that the sexes are different.
Yeah, there's a book I'm reading, and I never recommend books until I'm done. But if the book keeps going in the way that it's going, and it was recommended to me by an authority, I strongly recommend it. It's called Men in Groups by Lionel Tiger, and Yeah, he talks about the book is mostly about the phenomena of male only groups and male bonding, and how pretty much there's no job in the world other than biological ones like birthing children, but there's no job that men don't do. But there are jobs that women don't do or traditionally don't do,
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Maybe they've pushed themselves into almost every job recently, but
It's just like with the manosphere stuff, you know, the toxic manosphere that they always talk. It's like there are no female. Jordan Peterson. There are no female bricklayers. Do we want to have equity in female bricklaying jobs?
Right,
Like, I mean,
right.
seriously,
Right.
is that what we're going for?
Right.
Because the communists, they tried it.
Right. Well, and that's funny because he talked about it to a feminist, and the feminist was like, "Well, we're not talking about bricklaying jobs. We're talking about Congress." And he's like, "Well, why? Is it because of power? Is that the only thing you care about? Is that the only thing you want equity on? Is power, right? That's what you're talking about." You know, where we talk about like male only groups, we talk about like the Boy Scouts don't exist anymore, right? They're officially
it's the
now the
Scouts.
Scouts of America, and they allow homosexuals and women into it. And so what happened? They've lost half their membership. And like my boys are not part of the Boy Scouts; they're part of Trail Life, which is again, it's like a resurrection of what Boy Scouts were 100 years ago, right? All male. We actually venerate the Indian, like the noble, the savage, right? We're like, you know, because it's like they were great trackers and they were great warriors and they knew how to do archery and they knew how to live out in the and like it used to be okay to admire an Indian without being culturally appropriating or whatever, right? That so and that's what the Boy Scouts used to do. So, anyways, when women or effeminate men invade those male spaces, men then pull back and recreate spaces somewhere else.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Yeah.
We're like, oh, you want it? We're not going to fight for that space anymore. That's yours. We'll just go make another one.
Yeah, and again, and that leaving of that is viewed as a toxic again, and just bad and wrong. And again, it boils down to again, what's the most important thing you can be in our modern society? Nice. It's like, and nowhere in the Bible does it say be nice. It says be good, and there's a very big difference. And good is laid out in the foundation of every chapter of the Bible. It's like this is what is good. And this is obviously what is bad. And here we are sitting there going, just be nice. Just be a good kid. Just be nice. Like, being not, you just, let me be a floor mat
Well,
for you.
speaking of that, it's like the difference between like male teachers and female teachers that you had. Like when we had guy teachers, if you had a snack or something in your bag, like just don't make it annoying and you can have it. And whereas female teachers, do you have enough for everyone? You know, that's the philosophy difference.
Like, look here, you communist scumbag. You stay out of my backpack.
There was didn't the New York Times recently talk, like, just very related to that, talk about how the ADH New York Times was talking about the ADH thing was like basically a scam.
Yeah.
Basically, like, we took young boys and put them in a room and made them do low-level clerical tasks for 7 hours, and they were like, "Why are you not focused? Why are you acting out? We better put you on drugs."
Yeah.
You're like, wait. You took a 5-6-year-old kid, you put him in a room for 6 hours, 7 hours, made him sit at a table and do low-level work, and you're surprised that he's not focused? Are you dumb?
But we need to bring
Like-
back some form of like blue team, like they had back during the Kennedy era. You know, it's like the top elite core, like all those dudes that you saw doing the blue team exercises were all just jacked. You know, it's like
which was like extreme, like physical, like.
Oh, I know what you're
exercise,
talking
yeah.
about. Yes. I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
And again, we've taken all like I mean, recess is just this unchoreographed play.
Well, I
time
mean,
where
it's
they
no
just do
different
whatever
than
they want.
different than yard time in prison,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of school nowadays is really just daycare.
Yeah.
You know, like my kiddos are homeschooled, and we're able to get through the whole curriculum in like 3 hours in the morning. And when you do standardized testing to see how you're stacking up against the public and private school kids, they
night and day.
outperform them. They outperform them.
And what's phenomenal though is like I mean back in the day, you know, you had bring my tractor to work day, bring my horse to class day, you know, bring my you know, I mean I remember kids would bring like I'm going hunting after school, so my shotgun's in the back of my truck. You don't have to worry about school shootings or anything like that because that's what they're doing. Like back when your dad was probably in school, it's like they probably had, you know, it's like learn how to assemble and disassemble a rifle day or whatever. It's like clean your hunting rifle day or whatever because those were, I mean, because the Boy Scouts was so prevalent back then. It's like if you weren't a Boy Scout in high school, it's like, what are you doing with your life? You better be playing football and have a part-time job or something. It's like, and now it's just sit in class, do math, go outside for 30 minutes, have lunch for 30 minutes, get back into class.
Well, sorry to break it up, but speaking of women invading male spaces, breaking news: Katy Perry declares herself Pope after reading the Bible for 11 minutes. In reference to her going to space for like.
Yeah. Speaking of time, it is still a work day for me.
Yeah,
It is.
So
absolutely.
if you guys want to carry on the conversation, I'm gonna step out.
Absolutely, man. Yeah,
All right.
appreciate you coming on,
Thanks,
brother.
guys. Take care.
Absolutely. See you later, buddy.
See you, man.
Well, Corey, I'll leave it to you. I just have a couple more memes and we can wrap this thing up.
Absolutely. But yeah, no, then you got what JD Vance doing this cold beers and
Yeah, just like I can't get enough of JD Vance just going out and hanging out with the troops, man.
Yeah.
He's serving beer to troops. That's amazing.
yeah, morale boost, man. Because he's one of, like, I mean, he was what? He was an E4. Like, he's E4 Mafia. Like, he knows. He can relate to the Joes on that level.
Exactly. Then this next one that I have here is one that we showed yesterday. But again, we are living in a society where homosexuals lecture us on morals, transvestites lecture us on biology, baby killers lecture us on human rights, and socialists are lecturing us on economics.
Yeah, it's a joke, man. It's a joke.
It's all a joke. And then, of course, we're talking about how we're going to end it today is with the Pope, what did I say? Not Pope, but the Cardinal Robert, how do you say his name? Syrah. We'll end it with him talking about his reasoning why he thinks the West is collapsing. But
Yeah.
this is part of it right here.
Yeah.
Is like the most peaceful religion on the planet
Is being imported.
is being imported in droves. It's like they protest in the UK, they protest in Greece, they protest in Germany, Netherlands, Italy, Paris, USA, Sweden, Hungary. Everywhere they go, it's the exact same thing. Everyone is Islamophobic, whatever, and they're discriminating against us. Like, this is how evil influences. Evil preaches tolerance until it's in power, and then
Its silence is good.
exactly. That's it. That's it, man. But that's all I've got with the memes today, Corey. But is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, that's about it. This is the Twins with the Owasso Live. This was the Morning Loop. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you too can stay in the loop. But that is all we've got for you today. God bless you.
And we will hang on one second.
Occidentale, qu'est-ce qui...
Yikes! Not yet. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Now we're looking. Okay. And we will see you later, everybody.
qui vous inquiète?
Vous savez, la plus grande inquiétude, c'est que l'Europe ne veut plus ou a perdu le sens de ses origines. Il a perdu ses racines. Or, un arbre qui n'a pas de racines, il meurt. Et j'ai peur que l'Occident meure. Il y a beaucoup de signes. Oui, beaucoup de signes. Pas plus de natalité. Et vous êtes envahi quand même par d'autres cultures, d'autres peuples qui vont progressivement vous dominer en nombre et changer totalement votre culture, vos convictions, vos valeurs.
Occidentale, qu'est-ce qui vous inquiète?
Vous savez, la plus grande inquiétude, c'est que l'Europe